Hello, this is the Tiffness Fitness Podcast. My name is Tiffany, and my guest today is a world champion odd lifter and enthusiast and all around wonderful and super knowledgeable person, Beth Skwarecki. If you are even a little bit interested in odd lifts and old timey strength, this is the episode for you. I'll have Beth's Instagram at Beth SKW in the show notes, along with the Weightlifting League, USAWA. If you want to know more about the league, we talk about it a whole lot in this episode, so you'll have to keep listening, and I'll check back in with you at the end.
I guess we'll just hop in with a question. Like, how long have you been training, and how did you get into strength training?
Um, okay, so how far back do I want to go? I don't have like a long history
As far back as you want.
Okay, I do not have a long history with like serious strength training. And like as a kid, I was absolutely like the one who would like try to skip gym class or whatever. I hated it. It was kind of funny. I don't think it was until college I had to take some like required PE class. Actually, this is what it was. And I did one thing that I never do for academics, but I did it for this PE class because I just didn't care. I was like, what is going to be the easiest class to take? And there was one that was just called cardio fitness. And basically, you just show up to the university gym. There was like some little bit of like class part of it, but like basically, you show up and then you go on the treadmill for half an hour or the elliptical, or you can pick your machine and then you go home. And that was, I don't know, twice a week or whatever it was. And like, on paper it sounds like such a dumb class, but like that is what got me going to the gym. That's what made me familiar with the gym as like, oh yeah, this is a place I can go. I know where it is. I know what it's like to be there. I know where the locker room is. I see other people doing things there. And this was back in the day when we didn't all have smartphones. I don't think anybody had smartphones, but like you go and like maybe you have a Discman or maybe you don't. I didn't. And then there's magazines around. So you grab like a shape magazine or a self magazine and flip through it because you're bored. And then it's like, oh, here's how to do some dumbbell exercises. And I was like, oh, maybe I should do some dumbbell exercises.
Yeah.
They were always like, you do a curl while doing a lunge, and then you also do this. And I'm like,
and then you're in a holding a lunge and you're pulsing and doing curls.
yeah, it's but it was like that was sort of like my introduction to like gym culture in a way. And then actually when I went home that summer, I was like, well, I want to keep, working out, but I can't, I didn't have a gym to go to, so I started running. And I've never been much of a runner and I've never been a good runner or a fast runner, but I got into the habit of it that summer. And so and like anyhow, many years go by. And like sometimes I go to the gym. It's like a place that I'm comfortable, but I wasn't like a strength athlete or whatever. And I played roller derby for a few years, which was fun. And that was like my first time being like really serious about a sport. And then I would go and like lift or run or whatever to support that. And when I got into strength training and the kind of stuff that you and your listeners would be interested in was I want to say, I don't know, maybe like 2018 or so, I started like getting more into things. Like I had 3 kids by this point and had retired from roller derby, and it was just sort of like didn't really have anything to do, but I decided, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to do, like strong lifts or something. And I was like, lifting barbells and like actually seeing some progress and actually like working towards progress instead of just like, oh, I'll do a little workout here. And in 2019 is when I started competing. And that's when I started competing in a lot of things. So, and it actually started with odd lifts. So,
perfect.
So it's so funny. So I was in this little gym, like barely a notch up from Planet Fitness, right? Like they had barbells, but it's just like this little gym in this little strip mall. And like I'd been working up and getting stronger, and they had like a little set, they had like one deadlift platform in the whole place. They had 2 pairs of like 45-pound bumpers, and like I could use them both at the same time, and I felt like such hot shit.
Yeah, you should. That's great. You're maxing out the gym.
Pretty much. Yeah, they actually had like 2 blues, a yellow, and a green. So the yellows were like 35 pounds and the greens were 25 pounds. So I was like dreaming like one day I'll be able to lift them all at once. But so I was there one day, and this like old man walks up and asks, hey, can I work in? Because the squat rack was attached to the deadlift platform. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I wasn't really paying attention to him, but he like lowered the safeties down. He put a bar on the safeties and started loading plates on it. He was standing over it, one leg on either side of the bar and lifting it that way. I'm like, well, that's unusual, but I'm not really paying attention. And then I'm doing my deadlifts, and I notice like out of the corner of my eye, he's watching me. And I'm like, oh, great. Is he a creep, or is he about to tell me I'm doing everything wrong? But it turned out he just struck up a polite conversation, like, do you compete? And I'm like, no, I'd love to, but I've never figured out like where to start. And he told me he was wearing, I think every time in his life I ever saw him, he was wearing a sweatshirt that said USAWA, and he like pointed it out and told me what to Google. And
perfect.
This is the United States All Around Weightlifting Association. So the odd lift. And he was like, you should try this out. You could set some records. So here I am, like deadlifting 2 plates, or maybe it wasn't even that at this point. And I'm like, what do you mean set some records? I'm clearly not like actually that strong. and he explained to me, which I guess I should now explain to your readers or your listeners. So this organization has a lot of lifts. There are more than 100 lifts in the rule book, and I keep forgetting the exact number. There are lots and lots of weird lifts, including the one that this guy was doing that day, which I now have a record in, the Kennedy lift, which is a Jefferson from a rack at 18 inches.
That's what I was because I was thinking Jefferson, and then you said Kennedy. I was like, oh no, I don't know what anything is.
Yeah, some of them in this organization, sometimes like a lift that already has a name will just get another name because somebody wanted to name it something fun. Or it's named to honor somebody who liked to do the lift, or to honor somebody who, like, in theory,
because every weightlifting league makes their own rules up and does whatever they want. Same thing with kettlebell sport. There's like 17 of them, and they all have their own stupid tiny little rules that doesn't actually make a difference because they just want to be a little bit different.
Like one person got really mad about that one rule one time. So, okay, so we have so many lifts, and there are weight classes, and instead of like, I guess, deciding, oh, there should be this weight class and that weight class, they're just like every 5 kilos is a weight class, from like, I think it starts at like 30 kilos for little kids, and it goes up to 125. So you gain a few pounds, you're in another weight class. New place to set records. And then they also have age groups for juniors, I think up to age 20. So then from age 20 to 40, you're in the open. And then from 40 on up, there's a new age group every 5 years. So when you put together all of the age groups, all of the weight classes, all of these lifts, the fact that some of them are one-handed lifts, so you can set records in both the right and the left hand. And just the fact that a lot of these lifts are like weird fucking lifts that nobody wants to do. So if you're one of the people who's like, yeah, I'll do that, you may just have like a blank page in the record books. So it is not hard at all to find lifts you can set records in. And that's
the sort of shit that we like to do.
Yes. So setting records is literally half the fun. Because they have 2 different kinds of meets, and people always ask me like, how does this work? So there are meets like nationals, which I just did this summer, and I can tell you about that if you want to hear. So for nationals, like, they announced ahead of time, we're going to do these lifts, and you know which ones they are, and you can train for them all year if you want, or you can forget about it until the week before and just show up and do them anyway. People do it both ways.
Great.
And then they also have record days. And the very first meet I ever did was a record day. And these can be very informal. A lot of them are like held in somebody's home gym. And in this organization, I've gotten to visit so many extremely cool home gyms, like people who dedicate their entire basement or their entire barn or whatever to, a lot of people have like vintage weights or like specialty equipment you'll never see anywhere. Or there's a guy who has like just shit he welds together or gathers from different places. There's like amazing stuff. So in a record day, so you can set up to 5 records in a day. And so basically you just pick 5 lifts and you go and do them. And as long as you have a judge to sign off, And if you're setting an American record, you only need one judge. If you want to set a world record, you need 3 judges to sign off on it, because like the paperwork's a little bit different. So there is a world organization for this, although I think there's only like 3 countries in the world organization, but you know, whatever. I do have
like the Super Bowl World Championships.
so I can say I think you've seen my Instagram bio. It says world and national champion of odd lifts, okay, at normal weightlifting.
Yep.
And so this is like on that day, my very first meet of any sort ever, I set national and world records in the bent press. And I got a little certificate for my first world record, and it's like hanging up on my wall right now.
Yeah.
So to pick up the story again from, you know, when this old guy was like, his name is John McKean. He passed away recently, but he was like my introduction to the sport. I have, you know, I have to thank him a lot for that. So I didn't see him again at the gym for a while, and I hadn't really seen him beforehand. And so I'm like, this is starting to sound like one of those ghost stories where, like, you know, turns out, oh, that person died 20 years ago. Like, I'm like trying to find him on Facebook or whatever. But I go and I look up USAWA, and I look it up, and I see like some pictures from a recent meet, and I'm like, this looks like 5 old guys in somebody's basement. And like, I wasn't really sure what I thought of that, you know? And I was like, okay, like this guy seemed friendly. Are these other people friendly? Like how, like, is this for me? Is this going to be welcoming? I have never done any kind of strength sport competition ever. I'm not entirely familiar with like how weight classes work. I'm like looking at it and being like, is that the top number or the bottom number? You know, and like, how is this record grid working? Because like I'm trying to pick a lift or whatever. And I just have like no fucking clue. So I'm like, well, I know people who do other kinds of lifting. And so I start asking around like the power lifters I know, like, have you ever heard of this? They're like, no, but it sounds cool. You should do it. And I ask weightlifters and they're like, oh, it sounds cool. You should do it. And I ask like everybody, nobody has any clue about this. And it's like, I was like this close to just being like, well, it sounds cool, but maybe some other time. And I, what the thing, I was just like about to give up because I had been trying to find any other information about it, ask what it's like. Are these people going to like welcome me or whatever? And on Twitter, okay, I write about health and fitness and whatever. So I spent a lot of time on Twitter, and I follow a lot of journalists and I follow a lot of scientists. And I was like, you know, there's a scientist who every now and then will like mention something about like, you know, old time lifts or strongman stuff or something. And so I reached out to him. I was like, okay, this is a super long shot, but and this guy's name is James Heathers. And he was like, oh yeah, they're great people. Those lifts are so much fun. And
you're like, oh wow.
As far as I know, he's never competed in this organization, but like he knows all the lifts. Like I think he trained with people that did. And so he was like, yeah, go for it. Sounds like fun. And he, you know, and so he sort of helped me go through the list of lifts. I was like, you know, I don't even know where to start. I'm making a list. I'm like going through the record books. He's like, oh, bent press is in there. That's a fun one. And I'm like, oh, what's bent press? And so I'm like reading the description or something. And I like take a video of myself like trying to do it. And I'm like, is it like this? He's like, no, but you're kind of close. And so it was like
the first video of the bent press is always like, no, but good try.
I should go find it and send it to you, because like I was making it look like a bent press, but I didn't understand how to make it work like a bent press. And so he basically like taught me over Twitter DM how to bent press. Just like, no, not like that. Do it more like this. And it was like 2 weeks of almost daily back and forth. Is this it? Is this it? And he's like, no. But between that feedback and just trying it out myself, you know, I figured it out. And then he was like, so what lifts are you going to do for the record day? And I was like, well, I guess bent press, since I've been practicing it for these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's the only one. So
so it's like I seem to have a tendency when I get into things to like just sort of jump into like the hardest or the weirdest or the more advanced kind of thing. Like I ran a marathon before I ever ran a half, you know, stuff like that. And so my very first experience in competing in any strength sport whatsoever was to show up to an odd lift meet and do a bent press. And everybody there some of them didn't know what a bent press was, and the ones who did know what a bent press was were like, whoa, somebody's doing one of these.
Yeah.
And I actually got to meet a guy who had been like a big bent presser when he was younger, and he's now like a million years old. And like he was able to give me.
It sounds like that's who most of them are. They're all about a million years old.
There's a variety. There is a wide variety. I know I've mentioned the old men. There are people of all different, you know, ages and genders and whatever, but it was really cool to meet somebody. I went and looked up some of his records. I was like, oh, his records aren't like that heavy. And then I realized he had done most of his heavy bent presses before this organization existed or started keeping its own record books.
Yeah.
So that was really cool to get to meet people and get to do this stuff, and to, you know, and by the time I did this, like I was actually doing a decently good bent press, and I was able to, you know, a lift I was really proud of. And like every year since then, I've been like, I'm gonna get back into it and practice it like I did then and do an even heavier bent press. And like no year since then has it worked out. Because I kind of have to train up.
Like, yeah, it's hard. It's a hard lift to like do halfway. Like it doesn't let you do it halfway.
Yes.
Because it requires it's a lot for your body to do and to recover from, and then also like to practice, because there's so many stupid tiny little things.
So many things that your body has to do. Yeah, and it's.
What is your record with the bent press? Was it? I feel like I know, but I don't remember.
I think I have gotten, so I have to go back a couple of years now for this. I think I have gotten under 40 kilos and lost it when I stood it up. So
yeah.
So my best is like 38 or something like that. And it's like I know I'm stronger now, and yet, you know, earlier this summer I was like doing some work.
There's so many things.
Just so many things to do. How can I do everything?
It's hard to pick. It's hard to pick the thing that you want to do all the time. That's why I'm like always like, well, maybe I'm gonna try like sport, like because I love sport, like kettlebell sport. But I can't do it all the time. My body does not like that crap. So I got you have to pick and choose what you're gonna focus on, and it's annoying. I want to do everything all the time.
Too. And it's like you can do anything, but you can't do everything, or at least not all at once. And like
yeah, because when I was like 25, I did a half marathon one Saturday, and the next Saturday I did 10 minutes of snatch and long cycle, like at a competition. I couldn't do that shit now. I would be dead.
I'm sorry, snatch and long cycle. Okay, so which was harder on you, the half marathon or the snatch and long cycle?
The half marathon.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I crossed the line of the half marathon, and I found my then boyfriend, my now husband, and I was like, I'm never doing this again. I will never run that far again in my entire life. And he was like, okay. And all I remember, so I did the race, and I was like pacing with like the 2 hour 10 people, and then the last like 2 miles I kind of sped up, so I got under 2 hours for my half,
Nice.
which was great. I was really proud of myself. I think I ended up beating my brother's half marathon time, and he was a cross country runner, and I was very proud of myself because he's like a skinny little asshole who can just run. But he never ran that far. He only did that like one time, like on a random whim. So I was like, I still beat you. Suck it. But you couldn't park by the finish line, so we had to walk like a mile back to the. And I was just like, we had to stop like 5 times, and I was like, this is the worst day of my life. I'm so exhausted. And then we drove back home, and we had to park across the street because we were going to get Mexican food, because I was in El Cajon, I was in San Diego. We parked across the street, and I had to stand up after sitting in the car for 30 minutes to cross the street. And I was just like, this like this old lady walk trying to stumble, and there's like a line of cars, and I was just like, I'm so sorry. I can't walk any faster. And then we had a futon at the time, so when we got home, I just laid the whole futon out, and I was just like a vegetable for like 3 days, and it was a deload week for sport, so we didn't do anything that week because we were leading up for the competition.
But then you had the competition.
Yeah. I mean, long cycle is obviously like harder for me, but I'm a snatcher. Like that's what I do. I think I did like a crazy amount of snatch, and it was like my second comp because I did the first one in December and I did that one in February. And I think I got like 229 snatches in 10 minutes, 12. And that was a little bitty thing because I was overtraining and under eating. So so I was like in a pretty low weight class at that point, not the weight class I'm in now. And yeah, and I don't remember what I got for long cycle because I don't care about long cycle. I'm not very good at it. I'm decent enough at it, but I don't love it. I love snatching though. Yeah, it was stupid. It was a stupid week for me to do because I was I had scheduled the half marathon because I had just been running a bunch. And like I was like posting on Instagram. It's like early Instagram days, and it's like one of like my mutuals was like, "Are you gonna like run a race?" And I was like, "Oh, I've never run a race before. Like I've never done any race. I'm not very. I just run because that's a thing that I know I could do." And I was a personal trainer at the time. I'd become a personal trainer like 6-8 months before. Like I was not like a long-term personal trainer. So I was like working out nonstop. It was just training all the time and not recovering. And he was like, well, you should just do a race. And then I was like, okay, I'm trying to race. And then there was a half marathon in like 3 months. And I was like, okay. And then I scheduled that. And then Brittany was like, oh, this day is the Worlds, so Cali Open Worlds. And I was like, well, let's do that too. It's only like 2 hours away. So here we go. That's all I was doing at the time. Like if I had like a regular job and crap, like I couldn't have been a functional person. If I'm crazy sore walking into a gym and being exhausted, not that crazy. If I'm, coaching people like kind of hunched up and sore, they're like, she's training hard. What a good trainer. I was working at like a big club gym. Yeah. So like, it was fine. I couldn't do it now. Especially because I'm like much smarter now about how I train.
Yeah.
Like there's like legitimate deloads and rest periods, and I don't run like that because I live in Colorado and running sucks here. I mostly just run for the very sleepy dog down here.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally relate to that because it's only in the last like, I don't know, year or two that I've decided to get like serious about Olympic weightlifting. So I actually started weightlifting because right after that competition with the bent press, John, who did eventually come back to the gym and turned out not to be a ghost or whatever. It was like, so I know you said you wanted to do a powerlifting competition eventually, because I thought that would be my next thing. And he's like, why would you do a local powerlifting meet when you could do Worlds, which was in Kansas that year, and be an all-round weightlifting world champion? And I was like, well, fuck, I do want to do that. So
you're like, I want that actually. That sounds great.
And of course I did both, but I looked at the lifts, and one of the lifts was a hang snatch. So there are no normal lifts that we do. There's no like just do a snatch, but hang snatch is one of them. And it's like that's just a very simple variation of a snatch with a barbell. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I know what that is because I went to a CrossFit class once or twice. I've seen this, I've heard of this, but if I'm going to fly all the way to Kansas and try to become a world champion, I need to do better than just muddle through with what I think I kind of remember from a CrossFit class I took once a couple of years ago. So I searched up weightlifting in Pittsburgh, and that's how I found PFP, Pittsburgh Fitness Project. And that's where I still lift to this day. And so I started doing that training and working it in with the other stuff that I was doing. And eventually, I guess for like, I don't know, a year or two at least after that, I'm losing track of the timeline here. I was basically trying to do everything and like train all the time for all round lifting and train all the time for Olympic weightlifting and train all the time for like any stupid shit that came into my head. I did a kettlebell sport competition. I, 5 minute long cycle. I could not, I cannot imagine doing 10 minutes of double out. But like
I mean, especially not if you're training every other thing that you can.
Yes, that is also true. I think actually I did that during a time that I was working through like a back injury, and like kettlebell stuff was one of the few things that did not aggravate it. So I was like going lighter on some of my other stuff, and I was like, oh, but the kettlebells actually feel good.
It's so interesting because everyone's always so concerned about your back when you do a long cycle. Like, because the back position, I always get messages, and I mean, you've seen on the like Reddit, is that okay for your back?
Yeah,
it was good for your
back. It certainly was, and it really made sense to me when I heard, I'm pretty sure it was Kim Fox who said, like, it's the same as when you carry a baby or a laundry basket. Nobody ever says, ooh, that's bad for your back. It's like you put it on your hip and you get your body out of the way so that it can be on your hip. And in this case, it's just like your arm and your kettlebell instead of like your baby or whatever. But like, yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And she's such a beautiful lifter when it comes to long cycles and jerks.
She's so strong. She's amazing.
Yeah. And she doesn't put her hair up. It's just
that if I'm lifting, if I'm doing anything at all, it is in a tight little bun.
It's in a bun, and when I first started doing sport, I didn't wear headbands, but I kept getting like one little hair in my face. So that's why I started wearing like thick ass headbands, because I was like, I can't have anything in my face. And that's still like when I do any sort of like lift, when I'm like doing a lift, like when I'm like, okay, like when I do like heavy bench press days, like I don't want my hair to be an issue. Like I don't want to get hair in my eyeball. I'm already blind. Like I don't also need to have something sticking me in the eye.
Yeah, mine is long enough it'll stay up, like without a headband or whatever, but like it's in a bun, it's on the back of my, like I'm not gonna do a squat with my hair over the barbell or under the barbell or anywhere in the world. If it's like bench press or snatch balance or something, I put the bun like right on top of my head. It's like I want it out of the way.
Yeah, and like when I do sport, I always have it in a big old bun because otherwise it whacks you in the face.
Yeah,
and, like I do snatch, like my first, because I play like you practice like you play. When I did my first comps, I had it in a regular freaking ponytail, and I kept whacking myself. But by the time I was like, I should change this to a bun, it was too late. It was like I have to commit to the hair, the ponytail for now. As soon as that was over, I was like, let me just shift this into big bun status, so I can shift and like make sure I know how tight the bun needs to be so it's still comfortable. I'm such a planner for literally everything I do. So like when I have snacks or like meals or anything like pre-lifts or like whatever, like I test them for weeks before PR tests. Like I did before like sport comps, I would, you like kind of like don't eat a whole lot prior for that week before weigh-in, low carb, and I'd go do that, and then I'd go have freaking diner food like at this same diner, and it was great. For bench pressing, I did pretzels a lot of time, but then Peter Curtis told me that I would be a real power lifter if I ate Sour Patch Kids.
Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah. He said that adds pounds to your PR, and I was like,
it absolutely does.
So I started eating Sour Patch Kids, but I tested them for a couple weeks before to make sure that it wouldn't upset my stomach. And then I made the grossest cookies that like weren't actually that gross. He sent me Peter again. He sent me this. They had vanilla or like sugar cookies with Sour Patch Kids in them, and they were such a weird thing. And he's like, "Well, that'll get you a new PR." And I was like, "All right, like I'll just if you tell me a thing, I'll probably just do it." And it, I got my 50K with the barbell, and I was like, "Well, I guess it worked." So I guess next time I do a PR attempt, I'm gonna have to make gross cookies, because that's the only thing I ate them for.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely a Sour Patch person too. I actually have a little lunchbox. So the Elephant and Piggy kids books. Have you ever heard of those? If there's any parents listening,
No, I don't have kids.
okay, don't worry about it. So it's Elephant and Piggy.
Okay.
The books are really funny. Go ahead, read the books next time you're around a kid. But they made like a little backpack and lunchbox set, and my kid never had the backpack, but she had the lunchbox. It's a little piggy lunchbox. It is the cutest thing. And as soon as she got to be like too old and too cool for it, like I'm 4 now, Mom. I don't need a piggy lunchbox. However old she was, she gave it to me. So this is my meat day lunchbox. And anytime I'm like going crazy because I'm deloading before a meet, I'm like, okay, exactly what foods am I going to pack? And so there are always Sour Patch in there. You know, if I'm doing a weight cut, there's Pedialyte that I chug it immediately afterwards. And I do the same, like I don't worry as much about like my digestive system. I'm usually fine with whatever, but I plan out like I'm going to be hungry. What do I want to eat first? What do I want to eat second? What do I want to have in here for afterwards? And then one meet I like forgot about my Sour Patch, and then afterwards I was like, oh no, I could have lifted more if I had my Sour Patch. And so now what I've actually done on the last what I've done on the last meet or two is I packed Tailwind, which is it's like a thing for cyclists. It's like an electrolyte and carb drink. So there's like sugar in it. And so I put that in my water bottle because I will get thirsty and drink a drink of water. And then that way I know I'm getting some kind of sugar. So it's a candy for when I'm too distracted to eat candy.
Perfect. Yeah. It was such a change for me to like think about food like that, because for sport I can't eat before or during. Like it was very much like an afterwards thing. But when I was doing these like long like bent press training days, and I was doing long and like heavy work, I was getting hungry in the middle of the sets, and I was like, this is weird. And I like messaged Dan, who's like the person I chat with. He's the episode before you. But and I was like, what is this? Like I don't know. He's like, well, just bring a snack. And I was like, what do you mean bring a snack? I can just eat. And he was like yeah, he's like, just eat something. And I was like, that's so weird, because if I do long cycle with food in my stomach, or like not, there's like a specific some foods that are okay if I eat like, you know, later in the day, I have to time everything. If I eat like a meal and then go long cycle, I will puke. Like
because of like the pressure, like from your elbows.
Yeah, it made me sick. When I first started doing, because I started with snatch, and I would eat my dinner because it was like an evening training, because I used to do the core team in San Diego, and it's like a team training. I would eat like half an hour before I left. It took me like 45 minutes to get there. It was a whole thing. I had it all timed out for snatch, and then when I started training long cycle, I went and I had to like put the bells down, and one of my first sets, and Brittany was like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" And I was like, "I just feel like I'm gonna puke right now. Like it's not normal for how I feel. Like my cardio feels fine, my legs feel fine, but I do feel like I'm gonna be sick." And she's like, "Oh, when did you eat last?" I was like, "Damn it, like normal time, like an hour and a half ago." And she was like, "Yeah, no, you're dropping what is it, like 2 12s into your stomach for 4 minutes. You can't do that. You have to time your meals a little bit differently now." Yeah, and so now it's still like a thing for it, and I can there's certain foods that like feel fine for it, but you have to be a lot more like cognition of it. Like I have to think about it a whole lot more for sport. But like for bench press, I bring snacks to the gym. It's great. I brought muffins this last week. I was just in the corner. And I was like, this is great. So it was kind of fun to be able to like have a snack while I train. Because also the rest periods are really long for heavy lifts, which was not a thing for sport.
Yeah. How long do you usually lift, like when you're doing your bent press, like your bent press workouts?
Well, so now it's a little bit different. It's a little bit quicker because I'm working slightly lighter. I'm working at my max, but I'm working my max on weird versions. So like it's not too long. When I was doing like the end of my heavy work, like back when I did the 50K barbell, those workouts took like 2 something hours. They were really long workouts because I had to rest, because if I'm doing 5 sets of 5 per arm, which is what I think I did by the end, at like 85%, which is so much.
For 5s, so much.
Yeah. It was a powerlifting program that we just kind of were like, let's see if this works for bent press. But when you're doing powerlifting, you're doing like, it's like a bench, a squat, or a dead or
Yeah, they
whatever.
expect you to just be able to do reps as a
Yeah, and
as
that's not
opposed to
bent
like the
pressing.
entire thing. Yeah, whenever I
And,
trained it, it
and
was
a
almost always
single
singles.
arm.
Yeah.
Single arm work.
Yeah, and then you
So
have to
it's
do
like
it on the other side.
twice. It was so tiring. So those took forever because I had to rest so much. And also just like it was breaking my spirit a little bit. So I was just like laying on the floor in between. But now it's a much quicker workout. The actual work of the workout takes probably less than an hour most days. And then I mess around for another hour or so, do whatever the heck I want, and do conditioning, and I run around and play with all the things in the gym because I don't have a barbell at home, so I'll do like Steinborns or whatever, and um, yeah, but yeah, it's the end of that last program was strenuous. I had to deload for a hot minute from that, and I had to deload even longer because I wasn't sleeping very well, so I had to like give myself more time. But those workouts took so long. That's why I started putting my dog in camp because I was going to the gym and she's got separation anxiety. And I felt bad
You're
leaving
away from the
her.
gym. Away from it so long.
For like 2 hours and stuff, and I felt bad, and like then I was like, I don't want to like leave her for, because like also like it made me feel rushed, like it was like, even if it was like she's fine for a couple of hours, I was still thinking about her, which was like not helping me be focused to get through holding 40K over my face, like, which is not a thing you want to be distracted during.
Yeah.
So that's why I started one day and I put her in like a grooming day, and then I was like, let me just do this every week. So now she goes to camp every week, and it's nice. I have a day off from dog shenanigans, and I don't have to stress. Like I can just drop her off, and then I drive on the gym, and I say hi to my like 3 dudes that we have like a little head nod relationship, and we do a little fist bump, and I go on and I do what I want to do, and it's fun. But yeah, it was a rough end of that program. I was wiped. I took like 2 weeks off of anything basically after that. When you do big lifts, like how do you prepare for that? Like deloads, or do you do anything specific for that?
Yeah. So I am doing Olympic weightlifting like
Yeah.
basically full time now. So I try to let that so like my coach tells me what to do. And so like the standard thing before a meet is like usually a week before the meet there's a max out day, right? So like power lifters are like, oh, you never max out or whatever. In weightlifting it's like, oh yeah, you max out all the time. Like at certain times that are decided or whatever. But usually the week before a meet you work up pretty heavy, and then based on how you do then that helps you to pick your openers and to know like what kind of expectations to have going into the meet. And like you know that you're a little bit fatigued, but usually if you can like hit something and it looks kind of shaky that day, there's a good chance it'll be there on meet day. So then like Monday you would work up to some singles at like 80 or 90%, Wednesday a couple singles at 80%, Friday singles at 70%, and then Saturday or Sunday might be meet day. And so actually this summer I had 2 odd lift meets, and so I actually just kind of like took a little bit of time off from Olympic weightlifting. Actually, I think I had a meet and then like a weightlifting meet, and then like a week or 2 later I had the Hack and Dinny meet, which was a 2 lift meet. One of them is a floor press, the Hackenschmidt floor press, and the other one was a Dinny lift, which is it's like there's these 2 big stones in Scotland, so we're kind of imitating that, where one of them's heavier than the other. They both have a ring handle, and you have to kind of straddle them usually, and stand up with them, like just get them to break off the ground. And there's no straps allowed on that the way that we do it. So that's like a super heavy lift. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna need some time to recover after that. And so 3 weeks after that is nationals, so all round nationals. So I was like, okay, after that, I will get into some easy lifting and, keep a couple of Olympic lifts in there, but mostly focus on these lifts that we'll be doing at nationals. And after that, I got both a PR and an all-time women's record in our organization of a 510-pound Dinny lift. And after
That's
that,
amazing.
thank you. It's still like the lift I think I'm proudest of anything. But after that, I was just wiped. I was like, on Monday, I was like, time to lift, and I was like,
that's so much weight to move.
And I'm only moving it like 2 inches, but
still, that's a lot of weight to pick up, like in any version of picking it up.
Even when I was training for it, like I did not realize like just how much it takes out of you, because I was like, that's such a tiny range of motion. And at one point I was doing like reps. I would do like 3 reps or whatever for like 5 sets or something with like with straps, so it wasn't, it's like, oh yeah, I can hold this, I can stand up with it, no problem. And I would just be the next day like, why am I so tired? What did I do? Like, well, you picked up 400 pounds times. But
do you follow? Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead. Oh, I was
do you follow?
So you asked
I was going to ask if you followed Indiana Stones. I think that's what his name is on Instagram.
No, I don't think I
do. It's not it's not his old name, but he goes around and he picks up big rocks everywhere. I think you probably really like him. I think he's based out of Ireland. And he used to, I don't know, I followed him for like a really long time. I'm going to make sure that's his name. But he recently changed his name to Indiana Stones, and I was like, that's amazing. I am fully in support of this hilarious name. Yeah, it is _Indiana _Stones _. But he just goes around and picks up stones all around Ireland.
Yeah, and that's I know in the UK they have tons of these, like these lifting stones, and people will do like tours and go around. So there's like the Dinny stones, which have the handles, which is like kind of weird. And I think that's because they were used at one point for like counterweights for the crane to build the bridge or something like that. But a lot of the rest of these are just, there's a stone and it has a name, and people will come from far and wide to pick up this stone. And some of them have like
I think you would like that
one. Put it on, or like a place you're supposed to walk with it or whatever.
He's great. I love his stuff. I think he used to be a sport lifter. Maybe that's why I followed him however long ago. Or maybe he is still a sport lifter. I think that's how I found him. But like he's shifted very much to stone, just picking up stones, which is great. I love it. I love when people just find like a goofy thing that they like, because picking up stones is a goofy thing. Bent pressing is a weird thing to do. Yes. But like, if you find your little niche goofy thing that you love to do, and you can just do that, that's so great. That's so cool. That is really cool. That you get to find like a weird thing.
So speaking of weird things, would you like to hear what the lifts were at nationals and talk about them a little bit? So they change every year, and this year, the guy who is hosting nationals is nuts, but in a good way, I think. And so it's a 2-day meet, and there were 3 lifts each day. So first lift is a clean and press with heels together. So with a barbell. So you clean it any way you want. Then you put your heels together before you get the press command, and then you strict press it overhead. The second lift, I'm just trying to think. Should I? Let me just tell you what all the lifts are, and then you can ask me whatever you want. So clean and press heels together. Okay, fairly simple. Then there was a front squat, which is kind of cool because, like, in weightlifting, we do a lot of front squats, but they're never a competition lift. Power lifters do back squats as a competition lift, but here you get to do a front squat. Cool. And then the last lift of the first day ended up, they switched the order of some things. It ended up being a Steinborn. And I know you were talking about Steinborns. And I was like, okay, I've done a Steinborn in my backyard once or twice because it's a goofy, silly thing to do. And now I'm going to be doing it like with like 3 attempts with a crowd watching me to try to put up the heaviest possible weight. This is nuts.
And you did it, and I saw you working on it. What was your PR in that? Because I saw you doing that, and I'm just endlessly impressed.
I want to say my best at home was 90 kilos, I think. It was around 200 pounds. I want to say like 195, because I think I got I think at the meet I got, it was in pounds, 205 on the front squat and 195 on the Steinborn. Or maybe the other way around. I think that's
when
the way.
you do the Steinborn in a competition, do you have to put it back on the floor, or can you just drop it? You just put it all back, you do the whole thing. That's so cool. That's so cool, because I've seen it a lot, but people do it and then they just like flop it off the back. But no, you gotta do the whole deal. That's you gotta hit it.
That's so cool was not my personal reaction.
That's fair.
But I think I may be misremembering, but I think the 90 is the one where I did it and then I lost it as I was putting it down. And if you lose it as you're putting
less
it down,
cool then.
But that was at home. I managed to do it all successfully in the competition. And what was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, because like this is one organization and we have our rule book and it's written how it's written. So there are some things where other people might do a lift in a different way. But sometimes it's like, for the way that we do it here specifically, we require blah, blah, blah. And so, for example, we have a cheat curl. It wasn't in nationals this year, but it's one of our competition lifts. And you may not bend your knees, because if you could bend your knees, people would just do a clean. So like it would just turn into a clean. So, you know, if somebody's like doing a cheat curl like at the gym because they feel like doing a cheat curl, like they can do it however they want. But when we're doing a cheat curl, it's like you're trying to like maximize everything you can do in the movement. And so you have to do it with your knees locked, which looks very weird and moves very weird. And
is that just like a curl like with a barbell off the floor, or
yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stand here and maybe we'll try to explain this to viewers. But yeah, you have the bar on the floor, so it could be a regular curl with your hands the regular way, or a reverse curl. So if it's a regular cheat curl, you pick up the bar underhand, you stand there, you get a command to curl, and you're allowed to wind up however you want as long as your knees stay straight. So I usually like bend way over until the bar is like below my knees, and then I swing it, and then I try to like get my hips under it without bending my knees. It's people can look at my Instagram. I think I've got all of this stuff on there somewhere.
That's
it's in like last year's national. Huh?
That's so interesting. What a weird lift. I love it.
It is weird. And so I've done, I want to say my best on this is, it's at least 50 kilos. I want to say 55 kilos. And like I cannot strict curl that. I can't strict curl for shit. But it's like yeah, it's like it's just like a bizarre.
There's a very specific movement where you can just train in the weird spaces,
and I do love
have a weird curl.
I do love these because you can really like study it and be like, okay, what is and is not allowed in the rules, and then you figure out how to do it. It's like, you know, anybody can walk up and be like, oh, I'll cheat curl it. But I'm like, okay, well, how do I manage to get like the biggest range of motion on this, or the most power going into it, even if it means I'm doing something extremely silly. Or like even when I did that Vinny lift meet, I think a lot of the people there, like I was the only woman there. It was a whole bunch of guys. They were all bigger than me. They were all stronger than me, like definitely. Or like most of them at least. And it was so funny because so many of them were just like, oh, I guess I'll just walk over and pick it up. Meanwhile, I had been like, I have Denny rings at home, so I'd been like studying. I was like, all right, I'm going to grip it like this. I'm going to put my thumb here. No, I'm going to put my thumb here. Okay, I'm going to stand this way. No, actually, I want to stand with my left foot in front. And like I had like everything dialed in. And when it was time to say like what my openers were, because you get 3 attempts and your best one gets added to your total. And like I knew what to pick for each attempt. And I was like, I'm going to do exactly this many pounds. And everybody else was like, oh yeah, I guess I'll do 300. Let me try to pick it up. And I'm sure that any one of those guys could have beaten me. Like I won on points, and there was only one person out of like 7, I think, who actually did more than me on poundage. Which is like at least half of them could have lifted heavier than me if they had like studied it that way. But that's my thing. It's like, if I'm not going to win on strength, I'm going to win on strategy, or just like
knowledge,
whatever. Yeah. Like whatever I can get out of it. And I'll be, you know, sometimes I'll be like reading up on like how the old timers did something if it's an old timey lift, which by the way, I didn't even mention the second day's lifts. And there's some fun old-timey stuff in there. So the first lift of the day was a heavy lift that counted for more than half of my total. And it was a hip lift. So this is one where you need like a specialty barbell that has like a hook in the middle, and you stand over it and you have a belt, sort of like a dip belt, and you attach it to this thing, and you just have to stand up and get it off the ground. So it's like a very short range of motion. Again, you're lifting it with your hips, with this belt on your hips. And I ended up doing 800 pounds on that. And people were telling me like, oh, you train this a little bit more, you have 1,000 easy. The
Jesus Christ.
the heaviest ones that day from like the biggest guys, I think there were some attempts at 1,800 pounds. So the top lift that day was like 1,800. And I know that the record on that is around 2,500 pounds, like literally more than 1 ton.
So insane.
And then, then there was a double vertical bar deadlift. This is going to be hard to describe, but it's a simple thing. Basically, you have, how do you describe it? Okay, there's like a vertical.
Is it like a suitcase deadlift with 2 bars? That's what I'm imagining.
No, that is a thing. No, it's like, okay, imagine you take a barbell and you just take the sleeve off. Okay, so the part at the end that has like a 2-inch hole, or a 2-inch, it's 2 inches wide, and has like whatever, and then you just set that on its side. Okay, and then you do that with both of them, so they're just like standing up. Okay, like 2 pillars, and then you put some plates on them, and then you stand in between them, you grab both of them, and you stand up.
Okay,
so your hands,
that's wild.
Your hands are like grabbing, yeah, or like this, like let me see.
Yeah, so it's that.
Hands are like pointing down. There's going to be some extremely common household thing that we do this way that is slipping my mind, but and yeah, that would be a 2-inch wide vertical bar. So this was the 1-inch wide version. So I just got like a pipe from the hardware store, put a flange on one end, and then that's it. I just stack my weights on it. So I did 2 of those for a total of like 330 pounds or something. And then the last lift of the day is one of the old timey ones that I wanted to make sure I brought up. And it was a dumbbell swing. Have you heard of this?
Oh, I saw you practicing those. Only because of you. Only because of you have I heard of these. That's the only reason, because I saw you practicing it and being like, that's super weird. Great.
It is. It's weird. And like, it also strikes me as like, why is this weird? This seems like such a fundamental movement to do when somebody tells you that it's a thing. But until I started doing this, I had no idea it was a thing. So one of the books I have that I told you I was like gathered in case we bring it up is so this one's called The Truth About Weightlifting, and it's written in like 1911, I think, by Alan Calvert, and it's really cool. 1911, and it's really cool as like a snapshot of what strength training and competition was like around that time, because he talks about like these are the standard lifts, and through the whole book is basically an argument for like in the US this is just like show strongman shit that people do, and like nobody who's watching has any sense of like which weights are real and which ones are fake and what an impressive lift even would be. We should do real competitions like the Germans, where they like have it as an organized competition and you have referees and they know what everything weighs. And this was like a revolutionary idea, I guess, at the time. But he talks about it, and he has like these books or these pictures of like, here is how you do a dumbbell swing.
That's so cool.
So it's like, so I guess I'll have to describe this. So you have a dumbbell, just like the one we did in nationals was with 2 dumbbells. So you have 1 in each hand, so you could do it that way. But traditionally it's usually done with 1 hand. And so you have a dumbbell on the ground, and basically you swing it, and you swing it sort of like back and forth between your legs. You can have as many like swings as you want to get it moving. And then you swing it up over your head to lock out. So the motion is a little bit like an American kettlebell swing, and that you're getting it like between your legs and then up overhead. But the whole point is like to get it to lock out, and then you stand there with it. You're not doing reps. You like stand there So it's like, how do you get a weight over your head? You could clean and jerk it, you could snatch it, you could swing it.
Yeah, it sounds like almost like a double like kettlebell snatch too. If you're doing it with two, you just get that lockout in the overhead
Yes.
position.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot like a kettlebell snatch. Yeah, I think that's probably like the most similar exercise I can think of. So you don't have like the shape of the kettlebell, you know, working with you in
Yeah,
that way.
it's trickier because you have to
Just
hold
the
it
dumbbell.
differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you did it, did you do it like scoopy, like a pendulum sports style, or did you do it more like a hinge type swing, or did you just hybridize?
So I tried all of the above. I actually
Yeah.
on the USAWA Instagram, I actually did a post with a couple of different people's techniques because everybody did it differently. So you can just swing it straight up while you're standing up. You can swing it and then like drop under it like a squat. You can swing it and then step forward like a lunge to step into it. And then in terms of like how the swing itself works, you can swing it with completely straight arms, or what I ended up doing was pretty similar to a sport snatch. So like it goes between my legs and I kind of scoop it, and then my arm is like bending. My arms are bending as it's coming up, and then I'm dropping under it as much as I can.
Yeah.
Just like a sport snatch
Yeah,
with
that's
spot as possible.
yeah, that's exactly how I do like a double sport snatch. Is like when I land underneath it, like almost like a jerk when you land underneath.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so if you're doing like a double snatch or a double half snatch or something, like that's very much like it's very much like the technique that I used for the double dumbbell swing in this case.
That's cool.
So
That's
I know
awesome.
it was really
Did
cool to
you?
see people's different techniques for it too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure it's pretty like the range is pretty wide on that. That's cool. Did you start like researching? You know like a lot about old timey strength. Did you start researching that like as a side thing, or was that because you were like trying to figure out what they did? Now you know all now you know like I know you you're my reference point for like a lot of old timey strength things. Like you're the only person I know who talks about old timey strength things. Like that, and you have all these really cool like books and magazines and stuff. So like was it separate or like connect like
I mean
what?
it's
Sorry.
interest wise it's sort of a converging interest. Like I think I even if I weren't doing this, I would think it's still cool, but it's really, really helpful to go back into some of the old material and just see what people were doing. Like there's also like this one-handed snatch, and like barbell snatch. And I remember like looking like going and finding people who are doing it. And there's like a few people who are weightlifters, like Olympic weightlifters today who can do it with like very good technique. I mean, like with like significant amounts of weight, not just like here's an empty bar, oh look what I can do, but like serious weight. And like I'm like all over the Instagram hashtags. I have like I follow every hashtag for every like weird odd lift, just in case somebody posts one and I see it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I remember going back and looking at there's this very famous clip of Charles Rigoleau, who's this French weightlifter who was very good at the one hand snatch, and there's like a little like newsreel kind of black and white clip, and like when you see it played, you know, like on YouTube or wherever you find it archived, it's like the clip is just like a second or two long, and he just like picks it up, he's under it, and then it moves on. And
Yeah.
like the screen recorded that, and I like played it back in slow motion. I'm like, what is he doing that lets him get so low under that weight? Because anytime I try to do a one hand snatch, I can get like under it a little bit. I can't get under it that much. Like I'm always off balance. And I forget who, somebody very recently actually posted some stuff on Instagram about like technique for a one hand barbell snatch. And I was like, yes, that is exactly what I noticed. So when Rigoleau, he starts out facing the barbell, and then as soon as he is done extending and he starts to drop under, he twists his hips. So he ends up, barbell doesn't change its angle, but he ends up facing 90 degrees from where he started.
I think
So
that's what Peter does.
yeah, that might
Peter,
be
Peter Curtis.
posting it.
Yeah, because that's what he's been doing, a lot of one-handed snatch, especially because he like hurt his shoulder at one point. But like yeah, he does like a whole flippity turn thing. It's
Yeah.
very it feels like you would lose your balance doing that, but
It's better. It's better that way.
like,
And I have some
yeah.
weight thoughts about why, but it was, I want to say last year that I figured this out. It must have been in last year's nationals or something like that. Whenever it came up most recently in one of these competitions, I was like watching it and I was like, oh my gosh, he twists, he like spins around. And I tried it and I was finally able to do the like 35 kilo or whatever that I hadn't been able to do before. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was a secret. And I pulled it directly from this guy in like 1928 or whatever. And like,
That's so cool.
that's a good feeling when you can figure that out.
Yeah, you could also like you just like kind of like get to connect to like these
Yeah.
old lifts, and you're like, I'm doing the same thing that this like guy 20 something did, like,
Yeah.
and we're like, that's cool.
I love that so much. I love that connection so much. And like part of why I read so much about this old stuff is like I love sort of questioning our assumptions, you know, like we have an idea of like what it means to go to the gym and what it means to work out. And like, okay, but why do we do these lifts and not other lifts? Because you could lift anything in any way.
Yeah.
Like how did this get to be the standard or how did this get to be the competition lift? And actually something that like I only realized recently that kind of blew my mind is like when you think about like barbell lifts today, I think most of us would think about like squat, bench, and deadlift, right? Like those are standard, whatever. And like those come from powerlifting, and powerlifting started as actually those were called odd lifts at the time, but they were accessories that Olympic weightlifters would do. And
Yeah.
it always seems a little bit weird, like when people talk about like fundamental movements, right? You have your squat, your hinge, push and pull, or however you want to break it down. And I'm like, why would you have something that's three? There's a squat, there's a hinge, and there's a push, and nothing goes overhead, which is a little bit weird. And like, why is there no pull? You know? And so I was like, you need to like add some rows in or whatever. And then I realized these were people who were doing Olympic weightlifting. They're doing cleans constantly and snatches constantly and two different kinds of overhead work because they had a press and a jerk. It's like, oh, when you're always doing cleans, you are always working your back. You are always working your pulling muscles. You don't need to do any.
Yeah, you're pulling a lot.
And it's like, oh, it makes so much more sense in the context of people who were already doing this stuff. And you mentioned the magazines. I have some of these magazines from Bob Hoffman, he was like the coach of the US Olympic weightlifting team for a really long time. He also like had a personal thing where like bent press was just his favorite pet lift. And he was trying to get everybody, I have this book about how weightlifting competitions work. And this is like Olympic weightlifting, you know, or what we would know today as Olympic weightlifting. And so there's a lot in here about like, you got to snatch, you got to clean and press, you got to clean and jerk. And actually at the time, the weightlifting organization did have one-handed lifts like on the books. You could have a competition with one-handed snatches, one-handed clean and jerks. But he has like a little section in the back of the book where he's like, and also, in my expert opinion, every weightlifting meet should have a bent press meet afterwards.
I'm like, not opposed.
I asked my weightlifting coach, and he's like, no.
Are you sure? Yeah, I would love to do a bent press in a competition. That'd be fun. I think I'd get an extra couple kilos on there just because there'd be people there. I'd have a little extra pressure.
Well, they used to hold a bent press championships every year. And yeah, it's like bring
What's
that back.
What's wrong with the world that we're not doing bent presses all of the time? I'm gonna be one of those old people like, let's bring back the bent press. And what are you talking about, Grandma?
So funny, one of these, and it may have been Alan Calvert, it might have been somebody else, was talking about like kids these days, all they want to do is bent press. It's just a supporting balancing lift that people do for show. If you want to actually get strong, do your, you know, strict presses or whatever. It's like, yes, that is true. It is a supporting lift. It is just for show and it's fun and we should bring it back and we should get all the kids wanting to do it again.
I'm so bad at strict pressing though. I don't want to do strict press.
Yeah, no.
My problem with a strict press is I I will drop into a bench press.
If you're doing
like
like
when I do like a strict 20, like a strict like kettlebell like bench press, as soon as it gets hard, I'm like, oh, we're bench pressing. So like I can't not. So if I do like heavy presses, I have to do a double because otherwise I'm like, let's just. I know I can get 24 up if if I bench press it. I can do that easy, but strict pressing is a lot harder.
I think the first time I tried, there's like one of these like dumb challenges. Can you like do XYZ with a 24 kilo bell? And the one time I was like, all right, I don't think I can press it, but let me see. And I got it up and I like tried to press it and I couldn't. And then I was just like, well, my immediate next reaction. It's like, well, I can bench press
it. I can always bench press it. I mean, just about. Like if it's struggling here on a press, I can do this and lock it out. And it'll.
Oh, you froze on me. Hang on.
Be your knowledge of like old strength that you found. Like where do you get these old strength magazines? Do you like thrift or is it on eBay or
so
people?
I have one package of magazines and I got it from eBay. Because I knew that it existed. I just heard so much about Strength and Health magazine, and I had and I knew about so Strength and Health was published by Bob Hoffman out of York, and so he's the guy that I mentioned a minute ago who loved the bench press and who coached the Olympic team, and I think okay, so here's I think this is my path to that. So I knew about York because I live in Pennsylvania, and I think it was actually my weightlifting coach, Tom Dewar, by the way, who mentioned one point like, oh yeah, next time you're going through that area, stop at the York Museum. It's really cool. So the company still exists. I don't know if they manufacture anything there anymore, but they have a museum there. And so it's like a little barbell museum. And it's also like the weightlifting Hall of Fame. And they have so much cool stuff there. So if you're ever like driving through like the middle of Pennsylvania, like definitely stop there. They have, they have like Louis Sears dumbbell. They have, they have a bunch of like cool old challenge dumbbells. They have, a bunch of stuff. They have some old like books that are sort of like under glass, but it's like How to Bench Press by Sigmund Klein or whatever. And so there's actually a book, Muscletown, USA by John Fair, that talks all about Bob Hoffman and York. And like the guy's a character, and there's all kinds of nutty stuff that goes on. This includes that. So his company made one. It was not the first protein powder because he like stole the recipe from this other guy who made the first protein powder. There
always men fighting over the same shit. It's always what it is.
Yeah, and like Bob Hoffman seems to have been like a very sort of like Trump-like figure. Like he's always like lying, cheating, stealing, but also like having this big business that people love. And so anyhow, super fascinating book about him and about this, and about it includes some stuff about like when the US weightlifting team first discovered steroids, because like they found out that the Russians were using them, right? Because they had like their protein powder, and they're like, all right, well now we got protein powder, we're going to do great at the Olympics. And that's when the Russians like really started beating them. And they're like, what kind of protein powder did they have? They found out about the steroids, but at the same time, they're also doing like hypnosis, and they figured out how to sell like squat racks that have like built-in pins, and they're like, oh well, you can do isometrics, like pulling up against the pins. And so they have people doing all of these things at the same time, and then ask them afterwards like, so which one do you think worked best for you? And it's like the one guy was like, probably the hypnosis. It's like, but he's like also taking steroids and also doing this other stuff, and it's like they had
I feel like the steroids were probably a good one.
they like had steroids in their hands and were not able to figure out that they worked because they weren't like testing it in any kind of like systematic scientific way, which I thought was hilarious.
Like, yeah, it's the hypnosis, definitely not the drugs I'm injecting into my body.
Yeah, which and I believe at the time they were like doing other drugs too for other reasons, and it's just like, yeah, just more drugs.
I feel like that's true of most of history, is that people were mostly just doing a lot of drugs.
the drugs never quite make it into the history books, but yeah, there's
there's a
other
lot of drugs,
too.
and they're all having a good time, and
Yeah,
and they're like, it's not the drugs, it was just my brain and my body the whole time. Don't worry about
yeah, definitely. Um,
it.
yeah, I hope I'm not gonna misremember this, but I think when they first started doing drug testing, like the advent of drug testing in sports in general for any reason was not about steroids. It was about like, we don't want you taking speed and then dying on TV. Because there's some
Honestly, that's fair.
runner who died, I think, but it was like other kinds of drugs first that they were worried about before anybody ever started worrying about steroids. But I don't know that.
You know what? I get that. I get that. That would be pretty traumatizing for the world if the Olympics were happening and a bunch of people kept dropping because
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they were doing
There was,
speed and then running sprints or whatever.
yeah, there was at least one runner who died. I don't remember what kind of drug it was, but it was like a stimulant. I'll have to go and look this up afterwards so I can tell you if I was wrong.
Yeah,
But
I'll put it in the end notes.
yeah, no. But I will say, I think one of the things that helped me learn about like this history is there was this series that, oh, who did it? Rogue did a couple of these series on they did some on stone lifting, they did some on different personalities through history. They did one on Eugene Sandow, they did one on Katie Sanduina, they did there were a few of these, and like Jan Todd was in all of them. That's when I first heard about the Dinnie Stones, because she was the first woman to lift the Dinnie Stones, and as of when these movies came out just a few years ago, she was still the only one who had ever done it. And I remember watching that thinking, I wonder if one day I can. And then not too long after that, I saw, I don't know how I had ended up following Chloe Brennan, but she actually has done all round lifting as well. And it turns out like we know, we have some mutual friends or whatever. And I remember watching one day, actually the same day that I did Worlds in Kansas, I was just like scrolling Instagram before lifting started for the day, and I saw her doing like a training lift for the Dinnie Stones, and I was like, oh my god, she's going to do the Dinnie Stones. And she did, and she went on to do them in Scotland, and then she also did the replica ones at Rogue, which you've probably seen all over Instagram. I actually got like a signed poster of her doing that, because like
So
she and I are like very similar in like height and weight. And, you know, a
Mhm.
lot of people who lift the stones are like, you know, bigger people or whatever. And it's just like, oh, well, if she can do it, why can't I do it? Like a really nice, like
Yeah.
inspiration kind of thing. But anyhow,
It's
watching
nice
those,
to like see yourself in lifters. You're like,
yeah,
oh, like we're well, I can probably do something close to that.
yeah, yeah. It's like not that I expect to be like as good as her in every way, but
No,
it's
but
like
like, you know,
it's like, well, if she
representation of it.
exactly. It's like if she can do it, why not me? And like I
Yeah.
really do find that like really inspiring, like to watch people. Um and so anyway, from watching all of that stuff, I knew a bunch of like names and things and people, and I went looking some of them up and reading some books and whatever. And yeah, and I just love reading this stuff and learning about these kinds of things. Um and yeah, there's just like so many amazing things I come across reading.
Yeah. And there's so many different lifts and they like and like because I know you were the person who tagged me in the one female bench press record that we can find.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I was looking for it and I was like messaging people and message you and I was like, I just want to find these records
yeah, like
of these
who's
women.
even
But
me?
they're not out there. Like they didn't track
Yeah,
but like they didn't track women's records the way that they track men. So it's like, man, that's like to be like you just want like I wish they did so much, but like to be like also thinking like, oh man, like I'm lifting, 50K and like I'm like close to what the record is. And like that's really cool.
what, yeah, what's her record?
Like strength like 56.5.
Oh, you're so close. Wow.
I'm really close.
Wow.
But I like and like so it's like really cool like on like a like cool I want to be like the best and I want to do this, but like also like 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 I said earlier, like that connection to people who've been doing this for like 100 something years. Like that's really cool to like have that, I don't know, a spiritual connection. I sound super hippy dippy when I say it out loud.
I know what
But
you
like
mean. I know what you mean.
like but like it's like, oh, it's cool to like have a connection to the past like that. And you having all this knowledge of all these past lives is a really cool connection to that. My
Yeah.
dog's
Yeah,
back
I mean
here like,
yeah, that's why I love going to the York Museum, because like they have all these signs up by the old dumbbells and stuff saying do not lift, but you can like put your hand on it and be like, I
yeah.
put my hand on the same freaking dumbbell as Louis Cyr or whoever. There's this one that's called, I don't know anything about the guy who owned it, but it's called the Saffron dumbbell from Harry
Mhm.
Saffron or Henry Saffron. It's this very, very cool, like swirly, must be custom made cast iron. It looks so cool. And the sign says that like this was his challenge dumbbell, that he would be like, well, I can lift this. Can you? And nobody else could lift it. You know, everybody had one of these. Some of them would have like a trick to make it so nobody can lift it. Some of them were just like hard to lift if you didn't know the technique. And they said on this one,
Mhm.
part of what made this one so hard to lift is the handle is very narrow. So most people who are big enough to be strong enough to lift it and who have a like strong enough hands to be able to get around the size of the grip just don't have enough room in there to get their hands on it. And like I reached out and I put my hand and my hand fit perfectly. And I'm like, it was just like a magical little moment there. And I can't,
Yeah.
and then like I'll look around, I'll be like, well, it says do not lift. Oh, there's a security camera there. Okay, I won't, not this
Okay.
time.
I'll risk that on a different day. That'll be my
Another day.
national
Another
treasure.
day.
Uh, I won't steal the Declaration of Independence, but I will steal an old strength tool.
Just like bring a gang of you know strength nerds in there and just break in there one day and just like lift everything, then put it back nicely and leave.
Yeah. And that's all I want. I really want to get like a circus dumbbell or one of those like circus or like those little dumbbell like loadable dumbbells really bad. It'd be so much fun to bench
Yeah,
press. Dumbbells are a weird one to bench press generally. I'm still figuring those ones out.
they are weird. I really prefer the barbell just because like being so long, it stabilizes itself the long way, and like then you only have two
Not
dimensions to control.
my problem, yeah, it's like the length of it, but like I can't figure out how to get it in the right spot because with the kettlebell, it just you're here and then you're just
Oh.
back. With the barbell, you're here and you're back because the bar's out here. With the dumbbell, I can't get it packed as much because
Oh,
there's a stupid little the things are there. The little at the ends of the dumbbells are on there, so I can't.
oh,
So that's the weird
you know
part
what
for
I do?
me on that.
So you know what I do? I so if I'm doing a barbell, it's going to be in the same position the whole time. I want it even like
Yeah.
parallel with my shoulders. If I'm doing a dumbbell, so I turn it 90 degrees because it can rotate
Mhm.
during the movement, and that's fine. So whenever I do it with a dumbbell, it might even be more like this. It's been a while since I've done it, but it's like facing me and then my hand rotates during it. So exactly the thing that I don't want to do during a barbell lift, I do it during a dumbbell lift. It makes sort of like a C shape.
That's fun. I think I have dumbbells on Monday, so might be getting a tag. I try. I think
I
I
gotta
do.
try and
I
see if
don't
it
know.
works. I mean, it may not work for
I
everybody, but I did want to tell you one other thing that I saw in this book where Bob Hoffman's talking about his beloved bent press. And I'm curious if you ever noticed this. Because I didn't, but he says um bent pressing is a lift which not only requires great skill and bodily strength, but unusual balance as well. It is very difficult to maintain this balance with a very heavy weight when the ceiling is extremely high, as in the hall where the national bent press events have been held. This is the chief reason why contestants have succeeded better in their home training quarters or in exhibitions where conditions are more to their liking. So he's saying if the ceiling is high, it makes it harder to like get your bearings, as opposed to if the ceiling is low and you can like you're looking up at your hand, but you're also seeing
so
how
saying
things are in relation to it. I've only ever trained
I
bent press outdoors, so I've never had the
yeah
benefit of those
my
abilities.
I so like any of the heavy bent presses that I've like actually heavy have been in pretty high ceilinged places. Like Because I mean, I do in like my upstairs, and that's very short. But I'm not really doing any max efforts in that tiny room. I don't have the I don't have the equipment at this point. But like when I went to Denver to do my kettlebell one, it was like a big warehouse. So it was like not a low ceiling.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I kind of
Yeah.
want to I kind of want to go to like a small ceiling place to then a very tall and see if it makes a difference. Maybe I'm better if I had a short ceiling.
You are. This could also just be something he's making up to try to sound more authoritative. Like, I would not put it past him, but it just
I
makes
mean,
me wonder,
that's
'cause
about
I've
right
never
too.
done it in a place with a lower ceiling. Like, would that help you to like
Yeah,
your eye on things and balance better? I don't know. But now I'm
I know
wondering.
because I did my like I did 45 and I stacked the kettlebells and it was a whole freaking mess. I did that upstairs in my little home gym and that was like the worst one I've ever done. It was so hard and so bad. And
But
I
you
mean
also
the
had your
kettlebells
kettlebell
stacked.
stacked.
It was a nightmare. It was not good. It was really fatiguing. Um, but it was a short ceiling, so in theory maybe it should have been easier. I don't know. Now I want to go to some tiny ceiling place and see if that makes a difference.
Yeah, my garage
Sure.
has really low ceilings. Aw, hi dear pup. My garage has low ceilings, but they're so low I can't lift overhead in it. So
Yeah. Yeah, that was my concern. That's my concern because I was like thinking about getting a barbell. But I'm fairly certain if I had any sort of wobble on
oh
the
yeah.
bar ceiling, and this is military housing, and I don't want to make the military mad at me for putting a hole in their roof. So I've
That could be
I've had
bad.
a few close calls with the Indian clubs where I've like whacked a wall with an Indian club. I don't really want to risk that. I'm really hoping we get higher ceilings in the next place. That would be really convenient, or at least like a downstairs place for my home gym, because I
Yeah.
also feel bad doing any sort of jumping upstairs.
Oh yeah.
It was a really rough training cycle to do jerks. I was like, I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm just jumping all the time for 9 minutes, 10 minutes
Do
straight.
you have downstairs neighbors or is it just your family?
This is just me, but we're attached, so that wall is my neighbors.
Okay,
Though they're terrible and loud, so I don't feel that bad.
that's fair.
They need to get a divorce. So
We're all
I hope they
terribly
listen to
loud in
this
our
and they know.
way.
I hope they know that they should get a divorce, but they won't. They got
Oh.
It's military life.
Mm.
Well, I've taken up a lot of your time. How can people find you on the internet?
So if you're interested in my lifting, the best place is Instagram. So I'm Beth SKW on Instagram. And my day job is that I write about health and fitness for Lifehacker. So that's lifehacker.com if you want to read the stuff I write, some of which is about lifting and fitness and a lot of which isn't. And yeah, that's most of it. Beth SKW is my handle on all the internet places. But Instagram is
We'll
the
make
one.
sure that's all.
Yeah.
Instagram is the most easy to find everyone. We'll make
Yeah.
sure we have all that linked. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about all the weird things. It's also really nice to talk to you for reals and not just
Yeah,
through
we've never
Instagram
talked
messages.
before.
I know.
You
That's my
just
trick
like
with
it.
this is I've just tricked everyone to talking to me in real life. That's why I started a podcast. It's been
It's a good
very
trick. I
effective.
enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Win-win.
yeah, it's perfect.
This has been
Well,
amazing. Thank you for having me on. I love
yeah.
to out about this stuff.
I
Love it.
mean, we'll keep talking about it. We'll figure out more things to talk about and and do it again. Uh, and I really got to do the USAWA too because
You really should. You really
you've mentioned it to me and I've just
I
not
am
done
the
it.
only woman with a bench press record, either national or world. So you need to get your butt in those record books.
I yeah, that way it's actually recorded somewhere too, right? Like
Yeah, yeah. That's true. Like if you
so
want to
it
get
counts for something a little bit.
yes, a lot of these odd lifts, like somebody will like ask me and they'll be like, what's the heaviest anybody's ever done in this? And it's like, I can tell you what's the heaviest anybody's ever done in the USAWA, but that is not everybody.
Yeah.
Like their top bent press record for anybody is like 155 pounds. Like I know there are guys on Instagram that have done more than that. Like I can think of several.
Yeah, Peter did 200.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other Peter did 180.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not that many people into bent pressing. Most of them are named Peter.
Like 2/3 or something. Yeah, and I've seen there's at least one other guy who's done like at least 200 pounds. I can't remember who, but yes, there are definitely people out there who've done more. So anyhow, but you need to get your 57 kilo bent press in record books.
I'll write it down, sign up. If I write it down, it'll happen. And I'll be an adult about it and actually submit records and do your fun little monthly comps and all of that.
Oh, yeah. There's the quarterly. Let me do a plug for this. USAWA. Okay, if you're a member, and all you have to do to be a member is send in $25, and you can even do that through PayPal now. If you're a member, you can enter the quarterly postals for free. And they've been doing postals since before anybody figured out how to do remote meets on the internet. So basically you just lift at home or in your gym or whatever, and you write down what you lifted. It's like, it's on the honor system, but a lot of us will like post videos online or whatever. And if you can get a USAWA official to watch you, you can get it like certified for records and stuff. But otherwise, it's just like you send it in, you say, here's what I lifted. It's 3 lifts each quarter. And so the next one will be due I can't do math, at the end of September, right? So you do those 3 lifts, you send it in, and then they'll come up with like a ranking, and they'll tell you like how you scored relative to other people, and there's a formula that so like you don't have to worry about like being the only person in your weight class. They'll rank you and they'll say who wins, and some quarters I win the women's division, and some quarters I come in 2nd or 3rd, and I go at one of the very strong people who beat me, and it's a really compete against other people. So
I'll make sure I have USAWA linked as well, so everyone can check them out and grow the odd lift leagues.
Definitely. Yeah, the website is usawa.com, and there's a rule book there. You can download the record book and look up anything you want. And the Instagram for that is, I had to do it with dots between the letters. So it's u.s.a.w.a. No dot after the letter. But yeah, definitely check that out. And I would love to see more people getting into odd lifting and joining us in all of this silly stuff. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's great. There's probably, even if you're like out there and you're like, I don't think any of these lifts are for me, there's probably something out there.
There's a lift for you. We have so many.
There's a lift. There's so many lifts out there. You just have to like find the one. You have to find, maybe you need to lift a rock a whole lot of times, or maybe you need to do some dumbbell swings. There's something out there that's going to work for you. You just gotta look for it.
Definitely.
Well, on that note, we will wrap up this chat. Thank you so much for coming on, and I will talk to you later.
And that was my episode with Beth. Definitely follow her and the USAWA pages on Instagram, and check out all the lifts that the USAWA have in their competitions and everything that they do, because there might be a lift that's like your lift. You just won't know unless you try it. So check them out for sure. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please give it a little rating. That really helps more people find it. And that's all I've got for this week, and I will see you next time.